Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Critical Q&A, the show where I answer your questions based on what you've left for me in the comments section of my Q&A videos or have sent to me by email at askchrisshelton@gmail.com. It is 1 week from today that I will be in Los Angeles at the Center for Inquiry doing a speaking and reading from my book, Scientology A to Xenu, an insider's guide to what Scientology is really all about. I'll be speaking with Jamie DeWolf, who will also be there, and then I'll be doing a book signing afterwards. So I really hope to see you there, and I hope you guys can take the time to get out there and be part of that, because I think it'll be a lot of fun. And the link is below in the comment section for the event page for that site, or for that event. So let's get on with your questions. We have some pretty good ones this week. Here we go. Hakadoshi. Chris, your explanation of how you recovered people by first acknowledging that they had suffered a legitimate wrong got me wondering if those wrongs were ever redressed. Like if they got bad auditing, were the auditors ever forced to apologize? If they were defrauded by desperate wretches, were they ever refunded? Was anything other than an acknowledgement of what happened to them being wronged ever doled out on your authority or the authority of those you reported to that you know of? This is in reference to a question I answered last week about how I worked for a few years in getting people back into Scientology. So if you'd like to see the answer to that question, it's in last week's episode. In terms of redress of wrongs, I did make efforts to get people something more than just, wow, that really sucked, right? Sometimes that was all that I could do, and it's actually quite amazing how powerful that can be for somebody who has been sitting on an upset or is very, very angry about something for a long period of time. Simply telling them, dude, that was just so wrong, can really make a difference in a person's life. And that was pretty much, the first thing I would do. And gauging, how that was going was sort of my signal as to what else I had to do to get them to come back in. Generally speaking, when somebody would be recovered back into Scientology, one of the first things you'd want to do, and I sort of passingly went over this in my answer, is when you get them back in the church, they get a free auditing session. And generally that auditing session is not supposed to be hours and hours long, although sometimes it can be. And the purpose of that auditing session is to specifically address what it was that happened that they are upset about, so as to handle the upset, whatever it might be. Those kind of things, which are called ARC break sessions or free ARC break sessions that's Scientology lingo for an upset is an ARC break, or an affinity reality communication upset. The free ARC break session is part of policy. Hubbard wrote that that's something that you would do with people, but it's supposed to be a very fast action. Hubbard wasn't into giving away auditing for free, not by any stretch. And it's also, just to address your question specifically, an auditor who had wronged somebody would never, ever apologize to that person, to the pre-clear or the person who's receiving the counseling. That never happens in Scientology. In fact, it's part of the Auditor's Code, which is a list of guidelines and policies that auditors are supposed to follow, all auditors in Scientology. One of the points of that is I promise not to ever, apologize to the pre-clear, right? Or make excuses during the session, right? Or in or out of session, I think it says. So auditors don't apologize, right? And Hubbard's attitude about it was very much, look, they're lucky to be getting auditing at all, right? They're lucky to even be here. Like, they're lucky we're even doing anything for them, sort of thing. So if the auditor makes mistakes in the session, the auditor's supposed to deal with it in the session, of course. And he's not supposed to leave the person hung up in the upset. That's unacceptable behavior on the part of the auditor. But the auditor's not supposed to humble himself or propitiate in any way or make it seem like he's the one who's in the wrong. And that, of course, is just a reflection of Hubbard's personality too, because Hubbard wasn't into being wrong ever. So Now, as far as giving money back for things that might have been criminally, like if they'd had money regged from them, or they were sold a bill of goods or something. Generally speaking, when money goes into Scientology's coffers, it doesn't come back out without a fight. And if a person gets money back, they're considered to be getting a refund or a repayment. And a refund if they've taken the services and then want their money back. A repayment if they haven't done the services and they want their money back. It's just, it's just wordage. But if that happens, the person is supposed to be kind of, yeah, we'll give you your money back, but you're kind of persona non grata from here on out. They don't get declared a suppressive person, but they are forbidden from ever doing any Scientology services again. So generally that kind of thing is really heavily frowned upon. However, there were a couple cases where I recovered a person because they had had some really bad auditing. I mean, like championship bad. Or the auditing was a complete and utter total waste of their time and their money. And I made efforts to try to recredit them some hours. We didn't give them the cash back. That never happened. But we would recredit hours into their, onto their account so that they would, have more hours for auditing or whatever. So that's about as far as we went with in terms of redress. I, as the front lines person, was of course very apologetic. I never put myself in a position where I humbled myself. It wasn't that kind of a thing. It was, it was more like I was the Sea Org member who was the authority figure who was here to correct any wrongnesses or errors that had taken place on the part of the local church organization. And because I was in a senior position, I could speak with authority to say, well, these guys, not me, but these guys, really screwed the pooch here. They really screwed this up. Shouldn't have happened that way. Very sorry that it did. That's not what Scientology is all about. Why don't you come on in? We'll get it addressed. We'll get it fixed up for you, and let's get you going again. And that was kind of the attitude about the whole thing. And it was very chill, and for the most part, it was very much caring and interested in them, and that was what worked, So that's the answer to that question. Judith Lechner. I'm very curious about this cult. I've seen many videos and read many articles. However, I'm still confused about how the financial portion works. If a person is earning pennies in the church, how do they pay for auditing and books? And how could those employed outside the church spend hours auditing and studying while still maintaining their jobs? Could you please spend time explaining how the money works? Okay, well, this is a really big question, and I can't explain every single thing about this, but let me break down a little information about this to address a little bit of this. And I've talked about some of this before, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but we do get new viewers, and anyway. Scientology basically has 3 levels or classes of people that are part of it. You have the general public, who just pay their money and do their services. You have the staff members at the local churches, at the Denver church, or the Twin Cities church, or the Milano church, right, or the London church, the city churches, right? Those are staff members. They're generally not Sea Org members. That's the 3rd level, is the Sea organization, and those are the guys who are 24/7 dedicated. All they do, all day, every day, is Scientology, and they wear the uniforms, and they're a semi-military, paramilitary, naval activity, and they say sir and they salute and all that kind of nonsense. So that's the highest level. Those are the ones with the most clout, and those are the guys who work the hardest. The staff members work pretty hard, and the public don't really work at all. They just pay their money and do their services. So public are expected, because Scientology is a destructive cult. And it's not just it's not like when you join Scientology, you're joining the Y, or you're joining a gym, or you're signing up for a golf membership or something. It's not like that. Scientologists treat Scientology like the single most important thing ever. Like, ever. So, it is supposed to take a front seat, and everything else in your life is supposed to take a back seat. So now that's the theory. In practice, it hardly ever works out that way at the public level. But the public are constantly talked to by the staff and by the Sea Org that that's how it is. And Hubbard wrote lots of policies and lots of issues that said that's how it is, right? That there isn't anything more important than Scientology. And if you think there's anything more important than Scientology in your life, not only are you wrong, but you're deadly wrong, because Scientology is the only thing that's giving you your personal spiritual immortality. And not only that, for you personally, but Scientology is also the only thing that is saving the planet, right? That's the attitude. And so it's a crusade for them. And that's the staff, and especially the Sea Org, really treat it like a crusade. And that filters down to the public. So, in terms of answering your question of how they still maintain their jobs, well, they work 40 hours a week, like your regular Joe public person. Maybe he's got a family, maybe he doesn't. He goes to work, and then he's supposed to come for like 15 hours at least a week to do his classes or to do his auditing, right? And that doesn't include travel time. That's actually time in the church doing services, right? They're supposed to be like Monday through Friday nights, they're supposed to be in the classroom, or Saturday and Sunday all day, be in the classroom, right? Or put in the equivalent number of hours during the day if they work at nights, let's say, right? Or they're housewives or house husbands or whatever, right? Or they have the time for that. They're supposed to be making time in their life like Scientology is the most important thing, and everything else is supposed to fit in around that. And the constant battle with the staff and the public is this push and pull between the public wanting to do other things with their life, because hello, they have a life, and the staff members or the Sea Org members pushing hard, Scientology, right? And that's the constant battle with that group. Now, the other part you asked about, if they're earning pennies, now you're talking about the staff or the Sea Org members. Now, the staff members who are in the middle tier on this thing work at the church, and then they work an outside job. And so the outside job is what actually keeps them going. Or they have a spouse who has an outside job who pays the bills and that sort of thing, because nobody can survive off of the money that they make working for the Church of Scientology. Nobody, as far as the staff members go. So they have to have some other means of support. That means of support is what they use to buy their books. And as staff members, they're entitled to receive their auditing and their classwork for free. That's part of the exchange for being a staff member. Problem is, because of all the time that they're spending working and then working outside, very few of them have much time to do Scientology while they're staff members. So all the nice promises that if you join staff, you get all this stuff for free kind of evaporates because of the time constraints on them, right? And so, it's very difficult for staff to actually do Scientology. Sea Org members are full-time 24/7, the guys at the very top of this thing. So they have a time in their schedule to do their classwork or do auditing. How often they take advantage of that time, or they don't get, because there's all kinds of things that come up that prevent them from being able to use that time to do their study. It's called study time. Even if they're going in for auditing, it's still called their study time. And that's supposed to be like 2.5 to 3 hours a day that they're doing that. But that's only in theory. In practice, it really doesn't come out to that much. And there's resource problems and time issues and tiredness issues. There's so many things that go on with the Sea Org that prevent Sea Org members from doing Scientology too, that it's a struggle for them, right? And sometimes they'll just be flat out ordered not to go to study because there's some more important project or activity that needs to get done, right? And this happens all the time. The entire 17 years that I was in the Sea Organization, I did not do any actual forward progress or upwardly mobile progress on that Scientology grade chart, or their bridge to total freedom as they call it. I did not make 1 ounce of progress on that in 17 years. I did a lot of classes that had to do with my job, and I had to do other classes that had to do with technical stuff. And I got a lot of auditing that was security checking, right, to find out all my crimes and all the horrible things that I did, right? But I didn't get any movement on that bridge, right? So that's kind of, just as an example, 17 years, no progress. So that's kind of how that tends to work out, and I think that's enough of an overview for now. Dreaming Cat Studio. If you had a slow motion video on the moment or moments when you were still in and were starting to wake up, what would those moments look and sound like? What exactly and specifically triggered your doubts, questions, awakenings while you were still in the role of someone who was buying it all? What aided you in taking the psychological, emotional, and mental risks to question Scientology while you were still in it and after so many years of accepting it? I address this in my book. Actually, in chapter 1 of my book, I talk about quite a few of the things that sort of got me thinking that maybe Scientology wasn't everything it was cracked up to be. But there's a lot of details and things in the 25 years that I was involved with it or working for it that I of course had to leave out. Basically, when I was looking at answering this question, I realized that every one of the moments that happened were moments where I was faced with cognitive dissonance, where I was faced with an objective, factual situation right in my face that was counter to or different or the opposite of what Hubbard said was supposed to be happening in his written or spoken works. And so I would, bzz on it, right? Because here's something I'm seeing, and yet it says this, right? And you kind of buzz on it. And then you somehow work it out in your head to carry on, but you don't ever really totally forget about it. It kind of just goes in the back of your head. And then a little while later, something else comes up, and then it's bzzz, and then it must push on, and then it goes into the back of your head again. And I think for everyone, it depends on how strong their motivation is to be part of the group or activity that they're involved with, to overcome that cognitive dissonance before they finally just give up, right? Which is why some people get involved in Scientology and they leave after a month. They're like, oh, this is crap, right? And they get out because they can see that it's not doing what it says it's supposed to be doing, right? Whereas, some fool like me, I get all, hot to trot on it and think it's, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I get very, very motivated because I have a very strong desire to help people. And that motivation is preyed on by Scientology, and so I'm thinking that by doing Scientology I'm helping people, and so I keep pushing and pushing and pushing over the years until finally I couldn't. Some of the things that I ran into specifically were realizing, in fact, the first really major milestone in me leaving Scientology happened in 2003, I think it was. 2003 or 2004. I'm a little hazy on the dates, the exact times, because I haven't put it all back together yet. But I was involved in management in Western United States, West US management, and I had gone and I had done this big project down in the San Diego church, and I went back to LA, and it was a major project, and I did a really good job, and amazing things happened, where basically I pushed the San Diego church to get a bunch of people recruited. They recruited like 20 people in a matter of 3 weeks or something. I mean, something unheard of. It was just, nobody had ever done anything like that, really, in the Western United States at least. And I was very hot to trot on it. I was very excited. I was very pumped. The whole San Diego was out of their heads. They were so amazed and delighted and everything by everything that happened. I wasn't down there yelling and screaming at them. I pushed them, but I pushed them in a good way. And everybody really loved the whole thing, right? Well, I go back to LA, and I go, look, now I know how to do this. We can do this in every church. We had 31 churches of Scientology throughout the Western United States, right? From Albuquerque to Salt Lake City to Twin Cities to Kansas City, 31 of these things, and I really wanted to make this happen in all of the churches, because this was what I thought management was supposed to be doing, was making the churches grow, right? I'd spent 8 years working on this, and the churches weren't growing. And so I knew what we were doing wasn't working, but I didn't really know what to do. I went down and did this project, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. And I said, hey, I wrote it all out. I said, this is what we did, and let's go do it again, and send me out again. I'm ready to go, and all this. And it all got poo-pooed. And right, it was just like, now, whatever Shelton said, just forget it. We're not doing that. And it really hit me between the eyes. Undeniably, I could not deny it. There was no way to deny what was happening. I realized that I was in a bureaucracy. This management thing was a hamster wheel to nowhere, and that the truth of management was that nobody wanted these churches to really expand. Because after 8 years of running in this hamster wheel, doing all this busy work, none of that busy work was resulting in expanding prosperous churches of Scientology. And yet it was obvious that, and it was obvious to me that that was the case. And it should have been obvious to everybody else. We weren't doing the job we were supposed to be doing. So then when I got a chance to get out and actually do that work, and then come back and say, here's how we do it, and it was just, round filed. It was like, no, whatever Shelton said, no, we're not doing that. And it was right back to business as usual. And after, 8 years of that hamster wheel nonsense of getting yelled at every day and all the other crap I had been having to endure, I wasn't interested in doing business as usual anymore. And that was the point. That was the exact point where I kind of started losing it. And that was, I think I said 2003 or 2004. I mean, it took me another 8 or 9 years to really fully cognize, realize that, sorry for that Scientology word there, I can't believe that just slipped out of me, to realize that the whole thing was a sham, right? Or organizationally, the whole thing was a total sham. But that's how long it took me, right? Because I was so motivated to help and to want Scientology to succeed. It was less than a year after that I was out of management, though. I was done with management. I quit, and then shortly after that, I think about a year after that, I ended up on the RPF. Did that for 3 years, and then after that, I was just sort of making my way and doing good work, doing that recovery work and other stuff. But I never really got my head back to the place it was before that project happened, before that, I kind of got bitch slapped back into place and told to go back to doing what we were doing before that wasn't working, clearly wasn't working. And I never got back into that same dedicated headspace that I was in before that. So that was the beginning of what became the end for me as far as Scientology goes. So that's the best I can do to answer that question. Dolores Dobbins. Chris, I heard that in his youth, David Miscavige was thought to be taking steroids for his asthma, but it was noticed how well developed his musculature was for such a young person. I know he is into bodybuilding as well, so my question is, could he be taking anabolic steroids? The side effect of these drugs is the potential for increased aggressive, irrational, and violent behavior. This would certainly describe how he acts, and wouldn't this also classify him as a drug addict? I did a little bit of Googling and Wikipediaing on this question before I answered it here to see what the deal was with steroids. And I don't know, it's not clear to me from the way you've asked the question whether you know this or not, so I might be saying things you already know, but anabolic steroids are not the kind of steroids that are used to treat asthma. Those are a different kind of steroids, and the asthma treating steroids bring down inflammation, and they don't have those kind of side effects that anabolic steroids have. So no, I don't think the steroids that he might have been taking as a child to deal with his asthma, which we all know about, and I'm sure we'll be reading a lot more about come May 2nd when Ron Miscavige Sr.'s book comes out, all about David Miscavige. I'm sure this will be addressed in there, but the kind of steroids he'd be taking to deal with asthma would not build him up and would not be causing that what's called roid rage, which comes with anabolic steroids. Now, that being said, I have no idea if he's taking anabolic steroids or not to build up muscle mass for himself. I don't have a clue. I did find it interesting that the other kind of steroids, I'm forgetting the name, corticosteroid or something, I forgot the name, but I found it interesting that the asthma-treating anti-inflammatory steroids do cause problems with growth. And David Miscavige is a little tiny guy. So I thought that might have been a side effect, but as far as the other stuff goes, I couldn't say for sure. Blue Dance Lily. I have heard that OT8, revealed after Hubbard's death, indicates that Hubbard is the Antichrist and will return as such at the end of times, claiming that Lucifer is an entity of enlightenment. Is that true? In reading about Hubbard's early life before Dianetics, in accounts from his son, L. Ron Hubbard Jr., and Lawrence Wright's book, Going Clear, I read that Hubbard was involved in the occult and black magic, aligned himself with Aleister Crowley, a known Satanist at the time, and even considered himself to be Satan, and Crowley's successor. His son has some chilling accounts of Hubbard's words about this. However, the Church has denied these connections. Therefore, I find it interesting that OT8 would draw upon these connections and refer to Hubbard's occult beliefs. Well, Hubbard's occult leanings and beliefs and whatnot are very well documented. Especially, there's a whole chapter on it in a book called Barefaced Messiah by Russell Miller, which is the best biography of Hubbard I've seen or read. Absolutely amazingly documented and researched material. And so Hubbard, without question, was involved in occult rituals with Jack Parsons in Los Angeles, in Pasadena. Actually, like 5 minutes from where I grew up in Pasadena. Literally, I used to ride my bike past the house where L. Ron Hubbard lived for a while doing nonsense occult stuff with Parsons. And he was, Parsons was the one who actually followed Aleister Crowley, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Crowley, whatever. And Hubbard then was involved in the same black magic stuff that Parsons was involved in. And Hubbard definitely, from all indications, believed in it, right? He believed that he had a guardian spirit, and he wrote about that in his affirmations and whatnot. The stuff about OT8 is true. I've seen the issue. I believe Hubbard wrote it. It's certainly written in his distinctive writing style and in his voice, which is not really easy to duplicate, right? And I feel I've read enough Hubbard and listened to enough Hubbard that I believe that issue was written by him. And in it, he does claim that he will return as a politician, not as a religious leader, and that he has, this identity of Lucifer, the light bringer. And that's from what I've done a limited amount of study with this, and what I understand is that is an old Gnostic idea that the snake in the Garden of Eden was actually the good guy. And I think that's fascinating. I think that story is just amazing, because if you think about it for a second, right, not to offend anybody's religious sensibilities, but if you have a God who creates man and denies them knowledge, or knowledge, right, the tree of knowledge, and then they're going to eat from this apple, right, and then they're going to get knowledge. I mean, that's right up my line. I think people should know more. So, so the whole premise of the Garden of Eden and the original sin and all that was that they went against God's word because God was trying to keep them ignorant. So there's a Gnostic idea that the snake was actually the good guy trying to help man out. I think in the same vein that Prometheus was the good guy teaching man the secret of fire, right? And thereby making man more like the gods, right? That sort of idea. And I think that's how Hubbard was sort of looking at it. But of course, in this issue, it's available online. It's not hard to find. Hubbard mixes all of his own cosmology and his own, all of his own mythology into it. It's not, he didn't just go to the Gnostics and go, oh, that was good, and then take it straight from them. He mixed it all up with his own stuff and made it, and you'd have to be familiar with all of his own stuff to really, really track with what I'm saying, because it's very involved. But it involves civilizations in space, and a galactic confederation, and a group called Markab, which is a space civilization that takes over planets, just moves in, spaceships come down, they just, take over and conquer civilizations, right? And Hubbard has it that the second coming, as spoken of in the Bible, will really, what it really means is that Markab is coming, and they're the bad guys. And that Lucifer, the light bringer, is supposed to enlighten everybody. I mean, it's all just a mashup of stuff. And it really proves out, when I say Hubbard's a plagiarist and doesn't have a lot of original thinking with his ideas, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, is he drew from 8 or 9 different sources to come up with this mythology that he lays out in this issue that's on OT8. Now, what I've heard is that issue is no longer on OT8. Only a handful of people, the first guys in 1988 or 89 when OT8 was first released, actually read that issue, and they had such a violent reaction to it because another part of the issue is Hubbard accused Jesus, the Christ figure, of being a pedophile, right, and a lover of boys, right? Like, he was making everything out to be backwards, and that Jesus was a bad guy. So a lot of people had a very revolted reaction. It's like, oh my God, this is crazy. Did Hubbard really write this? Oh, jeez. And so what I've read about and heard is that Miscavige pulled the issue on his own authority, right? He just pulled it. And so that's no longer part of OT8. So, I've talked to OT8s who did read it. I've talked to OT8s who didn't read it. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth on it, but I believe that that's the case. And so, there's a lot more that could be said about Hubbard's occult beliefs and whatnot. I'm not going to get into all that right now. There's a lot to know about that subject. He borrowed heavily from the occult, the Scientology cross, for example, and other symbolism and things like that, and other wordage and verbiage that's used in Scientology comes out of that. And it's a whole study, and it's one that honestly I haven't really done. I've done enough to understand how Hubbard got mixed up in it, and what he basically came out with what's in his affirmations. But I haven't really personally gone too deep into that. And a lot of people ask me about it, but that's about all the data that I really have firsthand on it. So there you go. Hey, it's Flash Answer time. Rafaela Haspin. Did the Church of Scientology ever contact you to try and get you back in? If so, what did they do? No, they did not. I am a declared suppressive person in the eyes of the Church of Scientology. I am persona non grata, never to be spoken to, never to be heard from again. And so no, I should not be being contacted by Scientology for the rest of my life, and that's just fine with me. Amy Skiba. Hi Chris, when you were a Scientologist, did you vote in presidential elections? If so, was there any pressure to vote a certain way? Also, do you intend to vote in the upcoming election? Thanks, love the content on your channel. Yes, we did vote in the elections. In fact, where I was based in Los Angeles, the big blue buildings, that was a voting place. The Church of Scientology of Los Angeles was often set up as a polling place, so it was easy to vote, and we were encouraged to do so. I don't remember real pressure brought to bear one way or the other in terms of who should be president. I just don't remember any of that. And yes, I will be voting in the elections this year. E. Lauren. Hey Chris, I was wondering why Scientologists are always filming or taking pictures of people who protest or question them. I see it in so many videos. What is the purpose for this? Where do these videos and pictures go? Do they use them for fair gain? One word, intimidation. I've seen them hold up video cameras making like they're filming people with the shutter closed and the camera wasn't even turned on. I mean, it's totally an intimidation tactic to try to back off protesters and make them freak out and run away, because some people have a real aversion to being filmed or being videoed in any way or having pictures taken of them. So that's the main point for them doing it. If they do take real photos, though, it's not always faked, not by a long shot, and they do keep records of it, and they do try to figure out who people are, and they do take pictures of license plates and this sort of thing, all so they can continue to harass and intimidate the person. So in the end, no matter what they're doing with all this stuff, it all comes down to intimidation, because that's how the Church of Scientology feels they should be dealing with criticism. They are bullies, and they feel that they can bully anybody, anytime, when it comes to their view on the world. Okay, and so with that, we've reached the end of our show. I will throw another plug in here for next week. If you guys are watching my show next week, you will be missing me at the Center for Inquiry in Los Angeles. So if you can at all come out and make it there, please do. I would love to see you and meet with you and sign your book. And also, I will be at the Reason Rally with my podcast partner. We will be doing podcast work out there from the Sensibly Speaking podcast. So if you haven't checked out our podcast, please do so. I think we got a lot of good content on there too. I will see you guys next week. Thanks for coming around.